Tansley Stearns.
How's it going, friend?
It's going really well.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've had a question from someone that's listening, which is fantastic,
wonderful.
about a
Let's do it.
time when you felt when you were coming in the room, a little bit of imposter syndrome is what I hear, and maybe specifically around being the youngest person in the room. Do you remember a time like that?
I do. And even we'll put age aside. I want to just share. I still feel very anxious when I walk into a room of people that I don't know, a really large room. Even though I've now been in that situation a lot, it's still I still have a high degree of anxiety and even imposter syndrome at times. So it's okay. It doesn't necessarily just because people are this is my voice of this is like my reassurance. Just because people are older or maybe have more experience doesn't mean that maybe they're not also feeling the same way. And so I think starting to understand like that first, that kind of social anxiety exists with a lot of people, and even people if you're in that situation walking into a room. But yes, I do multiple times, and it feels really, really overwhelming. And so, my first inclination when I was younger is to go right to the bar, if there was one. Um, and maybe that's not a terrible idea because maybe you can talk to people while you're in line, but please don't overconsume, as we've talked about here. But maybe a little bit if it heals a little anxiety. Um, and then, depending on what the event is, again, acknowledging that other people are feeling anxious as well, just being in that big setting with strangers, and that setting is the expectation, the norms in that setting are, you know, you're kind of there to meet different people, and so I think people have a different lens on, and knowing that, just really walking right up, as I've had happen to me, and introducing yourself to a complete stranger is challenging, but also kind of expected. And so that's kind of how, unless you know somebody in the room, which I know a lot of people tend to gravitate to, that's where I would start because there's just is that kind of expectation of awkwardness from everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how would you say something to somebody that you don't know?
I think it's a simple handshake. Hello, my name is. I'm at this, if it's a work event, assuming it's at a work event, or maybe it's a professional event, I'm with this company and I do this for work. And 99% of times that should be the response from the other person. And then I think having some questions ready to go in terms of, you can do kind of some of the common ones like, do you live around the area? Like, and maybe you can dig into work related questions. People love to talk about themselves. And so I try my best to try to understand, like, you know, you have any cool things coming up? Do you come to this, whatever this is, very often? Or just you could go in for the vulnerable play, which we've talked about here. And it's like, hey, I'm newer in my career, like, what are some things that you found to be helpful?
I
And
love
people
those.
love that, by the way. If a young professional comes up to me and is bold, introduces themselves, and asks, like, I'm like ready to go, like, yeah, we'll be friends.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I love those. And I think 95% of the time what you just described would receive a very positive reaction. Let's talk about what might cause people concern here, which is the time when you get a weird reaction like rudeness or aloofness, or maybe just somebody that is having their own bad day.
sure,
What do you
yeah.
do then?
Um, oh man, what have I done? I have probably done everything from, tried to stay there awkwardly and ask additional questions to just saying like, well, it's nice to meet you, like, and walking and going somewhere else. I think that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. I mean, my general people pleasing reaction and reality is I always take it personally, even though I know better. So what I will say to you is the advice I'm going to give you is not advice that I'm very good at taking, as per usual. And I believe truly that it's rarely about you if the reaction is poor. And I love what you said, which is I think having a set of questions that become your favorite questions and try to think about some questions that are different than what everybody else would ask. And I think if you can do that, it is endearing. And I also very much agree with your point, Ryan, that if you're asking advice, particularly as a younger professional about career or the industry or specifically that person's perspective on things, I think you'll likely get a very positive reaction. And if
Yeah.
you don't, I think you can, to your point, hit eject from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would encourage people to frame, some of that in terms of the position. And so like we have to obviously find ourselves at credit union oriented, or I'll find myself in HR oriented circles, or
Yeah.
those rooms are filled with those types of people. And so, um, I actually think, again, people really like to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And so if you're talking to somebody who's in finance and accounting, asking them about interest rates, and they're just going to glow right away. So, or what
Yeah.
do you think is going to happen in the next 6 months in the economy? And like, this is what they typically will really be happy to talk to you about. I actually just met, I think for the first time, a United Airline pilot this past
Ooh.
weekend at a barbecue, and
Wow.
I was just glued, probably annoyingly to him, because I was like, I'm sorry, I talk to a lot of credit union people and other professionals. I just have a lot of questions. So,
Yeah.
and it was fascinating. And I mean, we probably talked for an hour, and I was really conscious not to be like annoying, but I think he has a lot of pride in what he does, and probably also hangs out with just a bunch, people that are in that industry too. And so that was really refreshing. And so if you find yourself in a place where you're meeting people from, areas of expertise outside your own, just have fun with it. So
Yeah. And the last thing I would say, Ryan, is I also think that it is, to your point, almost always endearing when someone is brave enough to come over and introduce themselves and ask some questions.
absolutely.
And I think it is also very distinctive because it isn't all that common. And so doing so will help you to stand out in the very best of ways.
And I would also, I would add last that like the more you do it, the more comfortable you will be. Just like with public speaking, I think it's a whole different skill. I get actually way more anxious working a room than I do standing up in front of and talking. I don't know why. I think it really comes down to that practice piece. So the only way you're going to get better at it is just doing it, and don't revert back to the phone or just the people that you know within the room. Make it a goal to meet a couple new people.
Yeah, I
And,
love
and
that.
you'll get better at it each time, because it's really awkward, or it has personally for me. It's still a challenge, but it gets easier the more you do it.
Okay, my last thing is also do some follow up afterwards. I have had some really cool interactions
100%. Thank
at
you.
this stage in my career with young professionals who have done what we just described and then afterwards have done a really nice job of reaching out either on
Absolutely.
LinkedIn or via email. That's a winning strategy.
Brilliant.
All right, friend. So work the room.
Work the room, put yourself out there. Most people are kind of uncomfortable, but just do it.
Just do it. All right. We'll
Good
see you
seeing you,
soon,
friend.
Ryan.